The general consensus has always basically been that debates don't really matter, right? But I think last night we watched that change probably forever. And that may have been true. I think debates maybe didn't really move the needle too much, especially vice presidential debates, back when our media was a little bit more honest. I mean, just a little bit less propaganda. But now our media is not designed to inform you. It is designed purely and only to convince you. And all they've been trying to convince you of lately is that JD Vance is some sort of woman-hating racist hillbilly who's going to aid in the destruction of democracy in the evil service of Donald Trump. This is what they've been trying to convince you. So when you turn on the TV and you see that guy just calmly destroying the guy that they've also told you is just a folksy, Midwestern, trustworthy plaid dad, the mind your own damn business guy, that's going to shock the system. And when you add to that the fact that everything JD Vance said was grounded in fact, grounded in reason, grounded in complete and total common sense, and that everyone but the craziest progressive found themselves agreeing with the guy, especially the candidate, Tim Walz himself. When you put all those things together, man, it might as well be over. I mean, that was probably the most impactful and important vice presidential debate in all of our history. And it started from the very first question. I mean, everybody knows American weakness on the world stage is about to force the entire Middle East into what will become World War III. And if this moment and this question doesn't make a person recognize that Tim Walz is in way, way over his skis, then I don't think that you're paying attention, right? One of these guys understands, and one of these guys does not have a clue at all.
Pose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea.
Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos. Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well.
Walz, what we're seeing here, this begins panic almost because he doesn't know what to say. See how he backs up there? And he's thinking? This is called the grief muscle. Right in that area there, that's a horseshoe style. When your forehead comes together in an upside down horseshoe, that's the grief muscle. He's not sure. Right there it is, right there. Perfect.
So when you say grief muscle, what are you saying that he's saying to himself right now?
He's worried. He's a little panicked, and he doesn't know what's going to happen. He's got the idea of what he wants to say, but he doesn't know exactly what he's going to.
Obviously, it doesn't take an expert to realize that Tim Walz is clueless, but it is nice to have an expert around for all the trust the expert type Democrats. But honestly, man, I think everyone with any ability to reason, I mean, literally anyone with any real common sense left, is thinking just like Scott Jennings over on CNN today. And just like Barry said, just like Barack Obama said, elections have consequences. And Tim Walz himself has acknowledged that we cannot afford 4 more years of this.
Pretty clear Vance outclassed Walz tonight. I mean, I was watching this and all I could think of was, man, Walz is so in over his head. I mean, can you imagine this guy sitting in the White House Situation Room with that facial expression that's like 50% sheer terror and 50% extreme bafflement? I mean, it was amazing, the split screen difference between a competent Vance and a totally in over his head Walz. The answer on why he lied about his trips to China and the Tiananmen Square thing was probably the worst VP debate meltdown since Stockdale in '92. Who am I and why am I here? It was 2.5 minutes of absolute terrible. For Vance, night of redemption. All the political media has told us that Vance was a terrible pick and Walz was going to bring in all these voters. That charade is now over. Walz does not belong at this level of American politics. Vance does. Final verdict, Tim Walz wandered into the wrong bar tonight.
I'm going to show you a lot of clips, man, but that is probably the very, very best summation that we've got. He says the final verdict, Tim Walz wandered into the wrong bar tonight. You cannot put it any better than that. MSNBC is going to try, but you can't.
The audacity. I agree with you that we're in year 9 and no one knows how to cover the audacity. The audacity is it someone should have said, stop it, stop. Are you effing kidding me? And they should have dropped that F-bomb, right? I mean, they should have just, this is a debate. This may be the only chance people have to see the difference.
I don't even know exactly what she was trying to say, but you have to give her a little bit of grace. I mean, this was directly after the debate. And honestly, I think that she really believed, after all her propaganda peddling, I think she honestly believed that Tim Walz was going to show up, deliver a strong message, and not embarrass himself. And I think, watching her reaction, I think she's just shocked, right? And unfortunately for these guys, I mean, they have to be shocked and they have to do their coping live on TV for everyone to see. But here's where I'm at with it. I think everyone should be thinking, after watching that, we should all be thinking about Tim Walz as the last person in the room helping Kamala Harris make an important decision. It's a nightmare. I mean, that's literally world-ending stuff. I mean, Kamala Harris as the last person in the room helping Joe Biden decide how we were going to surrender in Afghanistan, that looks like a dream team compared to, a Tim Walz helping Kamala Harris do anything. And honestly, I think after last night, I think millions and millions of people are starting to recognize that. And if they don't recognize it yet, they're going to recognize it once they start seeing the corporate media reaction to what happened last night. And I'm going to show you some of the better ones that I could find so far. And you can really tell as you watch these, the people that were really pulling for the guy, the people that were really, really counting on Tim Walz, which is unbelievable when you think about it. And you could just see how crushed these people are. But first, man, just in case you missed it, JD Vance did exactly what he was supposed to do last night. Remind America, remind us that he and Donald Trump are not what the media says they are. And we all know this because we already lived through 4 amazing years of a Trump presidency. And Tim Walz knows it too. I mean, just watch his face while you listen to JD Vance.
I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. First of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership.
This really is the perfect example, man, just the picture perfect example of the differences between the two sides. JD Vance is just reasonable. He's pragmatic. He's relying on actual facts and undeniable truth. I mean, just math. More people equals more demand, while more demand equals higher prices. I mean, it's the simplest economic concept that there is. And what we're seeing right now is more people. Many, many, many millions of those more people are illegal immigrants. And the liberal response, the Tim Walz response is, don't blame the illegals. Don't you dare blame the illegals. And I thought that Vance's response to that was perfect. We don't blame them. We don't blame the illegals. We blame the people that invited and incentivized them to come. And again, if you have common sense, if you have the ability to reason, no matter how you've been trained to feel about Donald Trump, the man, this is impossible stuff to disagree with. I mean, JD Vance made no mistakes.
Vance made 0 mistakes, and Walz made 2. Said he was friends with school shooters, and then couldn't explain why he was in China or wasn't in China. That was very strange.
All right, let's just play that soundbite. I think it's X4. Let's just play that moment where he gets fact-checked.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Oops.
I mean, he said he was in China during Tiananmen Square. I wasn't in China. That's pretty bad. JD Vance, everybody thought this guy was a bad guy. They were saying he was a creep. He looked beautiful tonight. He looked humble. He looked earnest, sharp, 20 years younger than Walz, new generation. I thought he was very polished. And then Walz didn't do what Walz was supposed to do. He didn't help with men tonight. He really never explained what Kamala's policies are. Did you guys get that? I still don't know what she wants to do. And then he talked about Minnesota more than he talked about her. JD's best times were when he said, well, housing costs are up now. Groceries up now. Borders open now. She's in power now. Why doesn't she fix it? She can do it right now, and she hasn't. The best line is when he said, Trump doesn't have just a plan. He has a record, and you can look at the record. And then he said, we're going to restore the American dream. CBS was terrible. Second question on climate change. You guys should have been doing this debate.
It sums it up perfectly, man. And he's absolutely right about CBS. If you want to bring up climate change when you're talking about the hurricane, I guess that's fair. I mean, that's what people do nowadays. But if you're going to talk about the hurricane, you have to talk about the fact that our government is completely MIA. I mean, people are stranded right now. People are missing right now. People need help right now. And Joe Biden said that they already have everything that they're going to get from the federal government because Ukraine needs more, is basically what he said. And if they want to talk about the hurricane, that is exactly what they should have talked about, right? And I'll say this. I will say that Vance's answer on climate change was possibly the best climate change answer that I've ever heard.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up. Governor.
Dude, how spot on is that? I mean, how have we never heard or made this argument before? I mean, if you really do care about climate change, if you really are convinced that it's anthropogenic, that it's man-caused, then stop farming out energy production to dirty energy producers around the world. No one produces cleaner, more efficient energy than the U.S. I mean, energy needs to be produced. People need it. It needs to be consumed. So produce it here. I mean, that was completely spot on. Almost as spot on as ABC saying Tim Walz's debate performance reminds them of Joe Biden. I mean, that is the last thing anyone would ever want to hear after a debate, but it is 100% completely true.
Kind of reminded me of the June 27th debate when Kamala Harris that night said of Joe Biden, it was a slow start, but a strong finish. And that's how I felt that Tim Walz kind of did tonight. You know, to use Tim Walz's own words, I mean, a lot about this debate tonight was weird. There were uncomfortable, cringy moments. But overall, I think my takeaway was something that Reince Priebus said on the outset, which was that JD Vance needed to come away as that humble, likable guy from Hillbilly Elegy. It seemed like he did perhaps get some points.
I'll make a political point, which is that what Vance did was something Donald Trump was incapable of doing during his presidential debate, which is repeatedly saying, if Kamala Harris was going to do these things, why didn't she in office? Now, whether voters buy that or not, Tim Walz mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act and a variety of other items under Biden. But returning to that political point has worked in the past for Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton. We'll see if it works this time. I'd like to make a final point on tone. The JD Vance on that stage was very different than what people may have seen in podcasts. But then there was an air of unreality about it. He talked about bipartisan solutions with nuance of a kind we never saw during the Trump administration.
How about that? A debate performance that reminds you of the debate performance that literally ended Joe Biden's career. I mean, that is a freaking dagger. It does not get any worse than that. And it's completely true. It's completely spot on. And really, man, this is why ideas matter. And this is why it is so important. Never been more important to actually discuss and debate ideas. Because, you know, if the media had their way, if the Democrat machine had its way, you would never in a million years hear from any of these candidates in their own words or on their own terms. They would just convince you that Tim Walz is the salt of the earth, Midwestern, dad in plaid, military hero soldier, and that JD Vance is a woman-hating racist lunatic who's going to end democracy, right? They want you to believe that. They want you to believe what they say. They don't even want you to hear what the candidates say, because these people, they cannot stand the fact that you're going to get to make up your own mind. And they're terrified that when you break it down, you're going to agree with JD Vance. If their own candidate agrees with JD Vance, then you must too.
There were so many niceties on that debate stage tonight. I am just kind of like, well, if you agree so much with JD Vance, why should they vote for you? I fully believe that Governor Walz went out there tonight and did what was practiced in debate prep. Did what the strategy was that the team put together. That was not the Governor Walz that I had seen out on the campaign trail. That's not the Governor Walz that I had seen during the Veep stakes, right? That was not the JD Vance that I know to be true. I mean, goodness, JD Vance was on that stage. He was sorry about Amber Thurman. He was sorry about he was sorry about a lot of stuff. We get things wrong, but do you agree with the policy? And then I just, that's not the Margaret and Nora that I know. Margaret don't do that on Sunday morning. So I just think that I know that there's so many people out there that want normal. They want normalcy. They just want, just be able to just disagree with, I just had a lot of things I agree with. This is not a normal election. JD Vance is actually not Paul Ryan. And Donald Trump sure as heck is not Mitt Romney. Okay? And what happened on that debate stage tonight was not enough contrast, was not clear enough for people sitting at home, or frankly, who will probably consume this through the clips in their local news or here on MSNBC or on social media, to distinguish and make a difference.
She's absolutely right. I mean, this is not a normal election. This is a choice between the most radical and unqualified ticket that we've ever seen and a candidate who already had 4 very successful years as president. But the machine has spent the better part of a decade trying to convince us that it really is just as simple as Democrats are good and Republicans are just evil destroyers of democracy. And she's right. This isn't normal. But where she's wrong, she said that the debate didn't offer enough contrast. She said it's just not clear enough for people sitting at home. I mean, just think about that. This debate could not have been any more clear. She just thinks people aren't smart enough to make up their own mind, it's the only thing that worries these people. People making up their own mind is what the machine fears the most. I mean, in my opinion, this debate could not have been any more clear. We saw exactly who these guys are, and the machine saw it too. And the machine is completely freaking out.
Pisses me off that I have to say this. JD Vance won that debate last night. It saddens me. So much on the line. so much, this country right now, in such a precarious situation, such a dangerous situation, such an important election. And again, it may not matter. Vice presidential debates, the experts tell us, never ever matter. Guarantee you Trump is smiling right now. Guarantee you Trump has been smiling since that debate ended last night. JD Vance did a great job last night of normalizing Donald Trump. He did a really super effective job last night of normalizing Donald Trump. I believe Donald Trump is a uniquely dangerous threat to this country. I believe Donald Trump is a uniquely dangerous threat to our democracy and the rule of law. I believe Donald Trump is everything our founding fathers feared. And if the American people understand that and agree with that, there's no way Trump wins. But if you're able to normalize Donald Trump, like he's just some Republican candidate for president, he's just somebody who wants to expand tariffs, he's just somebody who wants to build a wall, he's just a normal kind of candidate for president. If you can normalize Donald Trump, he has a decent shot to win. Like a somewhat normal presidential election, Trump has a really damn good shot of winning if he's able to be normalized. But if most Americans know that Donald Trump lies every time he opens his mouth, if most Americans know that Donald Trump is the only president in American history who lost an election and refused to concede and refused to participate in the peaceful transfer of power, if most Americans understand that Donald Trump believes he is above the law, if most Americans get that Donald Trump wants to be a dictator, a king, if most Americans understand that Donald Trump's whole game is to divide the hell out of us, like if most Americans understand that this is a uniquely dangerous guy, there's no way Trump wins. But if you normalize him, he's got a damn good shot of winning. And JD Vance last night normalized Trump, did a great job of normalizing Trump. Hell, JD Vance last night did a great job of normalizing himself. When JD Vance is running with someone at the top of his ticket who would undo our democracy if he could. None of that really came up last night. Tim Walz, God love him, I thought had a lousy debate. Tim Walz is standing on a stage next to a guy who said that if he were Mike Pence, he would not have certified the election results in 2020. That didn't come out last night. The only reason JD Vance was on that stage last night is because JD Vance has repeatedly said, I would not have done what Mike Pence did. I would not have certified the election results in 2020. JD Vance said that. That's not normal. So now a lot of the voters, right, who are going to decide this election, the voters in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, who are trying to figure things out, like, I really don't like Trump, but I really don't know where Kamala Harris is. Okay, you know, Vance and Trump sound kind of normal. I mean, get this. JD Vance last night made a better case for Trump and Trumpism than Trump has done.
That is some of the most impressive copium you're probably going to find. If you don't know who this guy is, this is Joe Walz. She's a former Republican congressman. He's basically a discount Liz Cheney at this point, but he's completely losing their mind. These people are completely losing their minds. They can't tell you what was a lie. They can't tell you what JD said that was shameless, but they can tell you that you shouldn't believe anything other than what they tell you to believe. And I'm telling you, man, we all know Donald Trump has broken brains, right? And honestly, I think he's damaged weak Republican brains more than he will ever damage the crazy liberal brains. I mean, you've got people like Meghan McCain on Twitter talking about, how much damage Tim Walz did to the campaign without even acknowledging that the only real damage these people could actually do would be to get elected, right? And then you have this guy, losing his mind, that JD Vance just showed us. How dare he show us that Donald Trump and him are just normal? The guy's losing his mind. That how dare no one talk about the threat to democracy? But these people are too deep into all this stuff to realize that no one talks about that stuff because literally no one believes it. The only people that still believe any of that garbage are guys just like this. They're already watching MSNBC. They're already, this stuff's crazy. It's wild to watch, man. These people, instead of reconciling that their side has put up the worst candidates possible in all of our history, they're convincing themselves that, everything would just be different if they just talked more about democracy, right? Just imagine what it must be like to be these people. Literally everything is coming apart because the American public got to see for themselves who the candidates actually are. I don't know. That's all I got, guys. Click on this video on the screen if you want to keep this thing rolling, if you want to know more. And if you haven't already, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.